approaches to the current situation in our relations, which are characterized by a comprehensive strategic partnership and are developing rapidly despite the difficult situation in the world and despite the attempts to exert pressure on our countries and to contain our development, both Iran's and Russia's. These goals are openly stated. The State Duma has ratified the Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between Russia and Iran. The treaty was signed during President Pezeshkian's visit to Russia in January, and on April the 16th, the law on ratifying the treaty was approved by the Federation Council. We are convinced that as this historic document enters into force, it will be a productive influence on our relations and on the international situation as a whole. Our political dialogue has been very substantive in recent times. Our presidents have met 3 times in Ashgabat. During the forum, they met in October on the sidelines of the BRIC summit. And as I said, this year, the Iranian president visited the Russian Federation. Today, we continued the conversation that started yesterday in the Kremlin, when President Putin had a conversation with my colleague. We discussed a wide range of topics in our agenda, and first of all, of course, our bilateral ties, including trade and economics. Our trade turnover is showing positive dynamics. Last year it grew by over 13%, just like it was in 2022, about $5 billion. And the growth trend is ongoing, despite the harsh sanctions imposed by the West against the Russian Federation and the Islamic Republic of Iran, in blatant violation of UN, WTO and other organizations' rules. We have taken stock of the preparations for the Standing Trade and Economic Commission meeting, which will take part in Moscow on the 23rd to 25th of April, and will be devoted to various sectors of bilateral cooperation, including trade, logistics, trade and investment, including the flagship project to build the Bushehr nuclear power plant, and the project of the Resht-Astara railway line, which is being constructed using a loan from the Russian Federation and which will become part of the North-South corridor. That corridor will certainly be instrumental for the expansion of trade and economic relations in the region. We agreed to accelerate the implementation of agreements aiming to create better conditions for the effective and comprehensive implementation of these projects. We supported the further expansion of our business ties, and I am confident that the free trade agreement between the EAEU and the Islamic Republic, which will enter into force on May the 15th, will certainly be a contribution. This will help us boost our trade growth and will help simplify mutual trade. We had a discussion of the current international issues. We have similar approaches. We advocate for the compliance with the UN Charter, the principle of sovereign equality of states, and all the other principles. without a piecemeal approach, which our Western partners resort to. We have agreed to strengthen the group of friends in support of the UN Charter, which works on the various position papers which are disseminated at the UN General Assembly and at other bodies of the organization. And one of the things we discussed was countering unlawful, unilateral, coercive restrictions. These restrictions create problems for countries who they're applied against, but even worse problems are created for the countries who impose such restrictions and for the global trade as a whole, as they limited the freedom of competition and the other foundational principles of the World Trade Organization and other entities governing international trade. We have agreed to keep up the substantive work on these topics, and in addition to our political cooperation at the UN and other multilateral organizations, we will also continue bilateral efforts to mitigate the effect of these adverse sanctions, and we are confident that we will be able to succeed. And we have deliberated our further cooperation at the SCO. We've discussed our plans on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action on the Iranian nuclear program. We both believe that the fact that Washington undermined the plan back in 2019 was a negative step, but we both welcomed the apparent desire to reach mutually acceptable agreements, including those that have been discussed between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States. Russia is certainly willing to facilitate this process and will certainly support all the agreements which include Iran's legitimate interests. We have compared notes on other parts of the global agenda, including the situation in the Palestinian territories. That situation is deeply concerning. We have discussed the developments in Syria after the change of power in December and the Middle Eastern situation in general. We continue our contacts as part of the Caspian Five and are cooperating on the South Caucasus. I believe the talks were very timely and were certainly a positive step, and we will continue to implement the agreements reached by our President and will keep in touch with my colleague. Thank you.
I believe that my counterpart, Minister Lavrov, he has already said everything that there is to be said, and I can just confirm everything that he has mentioned. I would like to add just a couple of things. First of all, I would like to thank the government of Russia for organizing this visit, for extending warm welcome to us. The talks were very good. They were very important, in particular with the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. I handed over the written message of the President of Tehran to the President of Russia. It was a very important message, very important letter that covers a lot of areas of our cooperation and also refers to vital international and regional issues. The conversation that I had with the President of Russia was very good, was very useful, was constructive, and this conversation shows that our relations with Russia are on the right path, on the right track. I believe that never throughout the entire history of the relations between our countries, these relations have never reached such a high level. It has never happened before, and currently we are making great progress in our cooperation. We can see that Russian leadership is playing an important role in various international dossiers and various items of international agenda. We are exchanging views on many international topics. We coordinate our actions. As for our talks with Minister Lavrov, we discussed a wide range of various matters, relations between Russia and Iran after the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement was signed. These relations have reached a new quality level, the level of strategic partnership, namely, and this agreement ensures long-term prospect for our relations, and it is indicative for the entire world that we are moving in the right direction and we strive for the long-term cooperation. And all the events that are going to happen along this path, along this track, are vital. The decision made by Russia and Iran is a decision of strategic nature, and we are going to adhere to this decision. We are going to continue moving, and this Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement was ratified in the State Duma, which we welcome. Soon it is going to be ratified in the Majlis, in the Iranian parliament. As for the free trade between the Eurasian Economic Union and Iran, very soon, in the next few months, this agreement will become mandatory for execution, will come into effect. Our trade will continue to grow. As Minister Lavrov said, trade with Russia is increasing to a good rate, and this free trade agreement will give an even stronger impetus to our trade and economic relations within multilateral platforms at the UN, at the IAEA, and in BRICS and the SCO. We cooperate closely. We pursue our interests in this cooperation. Russia chaired over BRICS last year, which was a success. A lot of very important events, very important meetings took place, and Iranian delegations traveled to Russia to take part in these events, and we believe that Russia's presidency over BRICS was a successful period for the organization, and we hope that this year the Brazilian presidency will continue the work that was foundation for which was laid by the Russian presidency. We are going to hold a session of the Intergovernmental Commission on Cooperation between Russia and Iran. The Minister of Oil of Iran is going to participate in this session. All the organizations, all the agencies of Iran that are cooperating with Russia are going to take part in this session, and other companies as well. I believe that the delegation will consist of some 100 people, and both the government offices and private sector will be represented in this delegation. And there is an important project, the North-South Transport Corridor, there are energy projects in our relations. All these matters are considered very promptly, and President Pezeshkian of Iran invited President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to travel to Iran, and we hope that this year, in 2025, this visit will take place, and we hope that we will find a date for this visit. And today, with Minister Lavrov, we discussed various regional topics, in particular Palestine and crimes taking place in the Gaza Strip. It is very regrettable that this genocide is taking place against the backdrop of silence of the Western countries. Any actions to displace people from the Gaza Strip, we believe it is unacceptable. All the legal tools must be used to restore peace in Palestine. We also discussed the situation in Syria, in Caucasus. We discussed matters about the Caspian Sea. We spoke about Afghanistan and also Yemen. We had a conversation about Yemen, the events that are taking place in Yemen. They have to do with the American actions. We condemn these actions by the Americans, and we hope that these crimes against the Yemeni people will be stopped. And we also discussed in great detail the nuclear issue. We discussed the talks that are taking place between Iran and the United States. I briefed Minister Lavrov about these talks, about the matters that are being discussed within these talks. We mentioned an important role of Russia in the establishment of JCPO in the past, and we hope that Russia will continue to play its role in any possible agreement that might be reached in the future as well. And Minister Lavrov assured me that the work will be continued. And we will continue to inform our Russian and Chinese counterparts about everything that is happening along this track. As for the doubts about whether the American intentions are sincere, we have our doubts in this regard. Tomorrow we are going to have we are going to participate in the negotiations in earnest to find a solution around the Iranian peaceful nuclear program. And all the requests that will not be realistic will diminish the chance to have an agreement. Now we are ready to take your questions, dear colleagues. Good afternoon. Tomorrow, in Rome, indirect talks between Iran and the United States are going to take place. And I would like to ask a question to both ministers. We saw some contradictory signals coming from the US. How do you think, esteemed ministers, do Americans want to reach an agreement?
Now, I believe my colleague here has just answered this question, so I would like to give the floor to him.
Yes, as I have said before, and I can say it again, the position that we represent at the negotiating table, I hope that tomorrow we will hear the American position. If we can see that they are serious in their approach, if they are not going to make some unrealistic demands, then in my view, it's quite possible to reach an agreement. Izvestia, Anton Zlatnitsky. My first question for the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran. Minister Arakchi, you have already mentioned this, but I would like to get more detailed answer. To what extent the positions of Iran and the United States became closer after meeting on Amman? What will be your suggestion for the next round of talks with the Americans, and when can we expect the direct talks? And my second question is for Minister Lavrov. Okay. Currently, we are only involved in indirect talks, obviously, due to the threats that are being voiced by the American authorities, due to the economic sanctions and the policy of the maximum pressure exerted on us. We cannot be involved in the direct talks with them, but the diplomatic path is open. Indirect talks is not something that we should be surprised at, so it is possible to reach an agreement during the first round of talks. We saw that the opposing party was somewhat serious in their approach. We saw that they are willing to discuss the nuclear program only, and these could allow us to enter constructive talks, constructive conversation. As I've mentioned before, unrealistic demands will not help us to reach an agreement. And my second question is for Minister Lavrov. Previously, American media claimed that Donald Trump asked Russian president to mediate the talks with Iran. Is this being discussed now, and what kind of format of the deal Moscow sees as the most acceptable considering security in the region?
As I already said in my introductory remarks, we are ready to discuss any format that would be beneficial for Iran and that would be acceptable for the United States. We proceed from the assumption that the only possible kind of agreement, as my colleague has just said, is an agreement exclusively on nuclear issues. And I would like to note that the Islamic Republic of Iran is willing to engage in a search for an agreement as part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It is a matter of principal importance, and this should not be mixed in with the non-nuclear issues, as that would create a very risky situation.
Good afternoon. We are very happy to see the signing of the comprehensive partnership agreement between the both countries, when the leadership of the both countries stated that the relations reached the level of strategic partnership. And I would like to ask about the implementation of the agreement, of this agreement. Is it clear now that as part of the implementation we can see the visa regime is being facilitated for the tourists and other categories?
Even before the treaty was signed, we had made a number of steps to alleviate the visa regime, to simplify it for a number of categories. The Islamic Republic is one of the many countries which are covered by the electronic visa regime introduced last year. It is as simplified as possible. We're also making additional steps under several documents to relieve embassy staff, both diplomats and others, from visa restrictions. And we're also finalizing an agreement on visa-free tourist travel for tourist groups, for citizens of Russia and the Islamic Republic. And I would like to emphasize that all of this was launched before the treaty was signed and, of course, before it entered into force. But the fact is, the strategic partnership opens up new possibilities for people-to-people contacts, and we will certainly aim to make it as comfortable as possible.
And I also would like to say that I can confirm what Minister Lavrov said. I can only add one more thing. In the field of economic cooperation, Russia and Iran developed their cooperation despite all the sanction restrictions. Despite all the restrictions that are existing currently, our economic cooperation, even against the backdrop of the sanctions, our relations continue to grow in this regard, and we implement our agreements in practice, as I have already said. And this means that we are not trying to legalize any sanctions regime. There is a UN charter that sets the rule of behavior, of actions, and since sanctions are illegitimate, are unlawful, their implementation must be stopped on the international platforms. Next question for the Sputnik. Good afternoon, dear ministers. I've got a question for both ministers. How the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty between Russia and Iran can help to overcome the barriers created by sanctions and deepen cooperation in energy, transport corridors, including north-south transport corridor and joint investment projects.
Well, Minister Arakci has just said, and I can confirm that regardless of when the treaty was signed and regardless of its entry into force, we already have cooperation along these lines from the first days of the illegitimate restrictions that were introduced against our countries. And we have many supporters at the United Nations, including members of the Group of Friends in support of the UN Charter, which is working on various position papers, including documents to demand this illegal practice to be stopped and to return to international law as basis. And in general, we have consistently advanced in our bilateral relations and in our international activities the practice of developing banking services, financial systems, payments arrangements which can protect us against such illegal actions. So the fact that this treaty has now been signed is just a reflection of our commitment to developing our friendly relations in all areas and all sectors.
And with this, we conclude our press conference. Thank you for attending it.